Hello, I'm Heather King, and here we are in the fifth week of Easter, celebrating the risen Lord. Still, I love it, and I continue with my little sort of ad hoc series of, I was thinking, what is this even about? And in a way, I guess part of what I'm trying to get across is that you can be halfway well educated, well read, halfway well traveled person in the Western world, and have your life be totally centered on Christ. Um, so, and I'm thinking too, my whole so much of my thing is about the vocation of the artist, and I write a weekly arts and culture column. In fact, I'm going to put the link below. My column last week is called Seek Ye First the Kingdom of God. And it's about the sort of seeming impossibility of being a creative writer uh, and making a living, somehow having made a living at it for many, many years now. I mean, it just seemed not only a creative writer, but a Catholic, more or less, uh, creative writer. And yet, there it is. The if it's too good to be true, that's how we know it's God, as a priest friend says. So much of I mean, that's really my life is so centered on my work, and at the same time, I've been tending these last months to talk so much about prayer, and I think the two are inextricably intertwined. My writing, everything that I do, my vocation, my work is cannot possibly be better than my prayer. And I want to talk a little bit more about a writer who I love later on. But first, I just want to sort of. Uh, I also tend to not. I really am not a good. I don't want to say a good self promoter, but I tend to yeah, not sort of. It's not even like I discard the idea, but it doesn't even occur to me. Oh, maybe I'd want to tell people about some events that are coming up. So, uh, one of well, the first thing that's coming up is May 15th. I'm going to have an interview, a Zoom interview, and anyone is invited, or a kind of conversation with the Irish Writers Center, because I'm giving a retreat later in the summer. But the Irish Writers Center, it's a huge honor, has uh, deigned to have a conversation with me. So I don't have the link yet, but I'll definitely I'll put it up on my website in here when I get it. So anybody can come and you can ask. I think we'll have a Q&A. So that will be super fun for me. I actually love question and answer because it's often so you can't control it. So I love that. Love hate. Then June 21st and 22nd, if you're going to be in the Washington D.C. area, I'm helping with Catholic culture maven and professor, etc. Barbara Nicolosi. We're going to give, or I'm going to participate in a Catholic artist retreat, or I guess it's artist retreat. You don't have to be Catholic, of course, to come, but it's sponsored by the Catholic. Um, oh shoot, it's called like the Catholic Writers Guild or Catholic Art Institute. Maybe it's Catholic Art Institute. It's going to take place at the Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land, which by all accounts is a beautiful place in Washington. So that'll be June, starts, I think, the kind of noonish on Friday, June 21st, and then goes to 4 o'clock or so on Saturday, June 22nd. Then, of course, I'm giving my 5-day memoir writing workshop in Ireland at Kylemore Abbey in Connemara, the west coast of Ireland, September 8th to the 13th. There's still a couple slots left, but they're filling up fast. So if you want to treat yourself uh, and have some community and hobnob and work on your memoir, come on over. So yeah, those are, so it's a lot of planning. And then I'm going to Venice after Ireland. I'm going to do a silent retreat after the retreat I'm giving up in County Donegal, and then I'm going to Venice. It's just a lot of, uh, it goes from the ridiculous to the sublime. My life of kind of a ton of solitude and silence, and then a lot of planning, and it'll be some travel, but interspersed with. I'm also planning these retreats here, there, and yonder. So anyway, but just to segue into the prayer that must um, undergird all of this. I just cut this out from Magnificat, Friday the 26th. Quote, it was a passage from Venerable Mary Magdalene of Jesus in the Eucharist, who died in 1960. She was a Passionist nun from Spain and a spiritual writer. And just this one, she's talking about prayer, and just this one little sentence: you tell me that you experience coldness and aridity, and that you do not know whether you love or how you love, because it seems that you do not love at all, but only desire to love, hope, and believe in love. And then she says, I'm very happy because that is the clearest sign, etc. But it just rang so true for me, because for all the prayer, I'm always sort of scandalized by, uh, my my lack of love, basically. But then again, the desire. We wouldn't be there praying if we didn't have this deep, deep desire to love. So I just found that kind of encouraging. And yes, we just keep going. And I really have been trying, a la Father Donald Haggerty and any number of other saints and martyrs and spiritual writers and followers of Christ through the ages, been trying to not, yeah, just have more of a kind of conscious holy hour, like really not just mass, but coming early and we're staying late, or going separately to church and just sitting before the monstrance if possible, or the tabernacle. And I wanted to talk about Carlo Carretto. Um, Carlo Carretto, this is the book. I got this, The God Who Comes. Carlo Carretto was kind of mid 19th or 20th century. He was a priest, Italian priest. I'll tell a little about him. But I got this book I was at St. Andrew's Abbey, where I'm a novice oblate, Benedictine monastery in Vallejo, California, little town north of LA. And they have a big regular bookstore, but they also have this used bookstore that's just great. And the priest who runs it, Father Martin, was telling me that all these kind of convents and monasteries often either they close up or they move on. Anyway, so they have this huge treasure trove of books from the kind of 1950s and 60s, which I personally love. And Carlo Carretto was kind of from that era. I've written of him before, um, just to situate him. Carlo Carretto, 1910-1988, Italian writer, mystic, and member of the Little Brothers of Jesus, modeled himself upon desert contemplative Charles de Foucault, who you may know. Um, Born and raised in northern Italy, as a youth, Carretto joined the lay movement Catholic Action. He worked for 20 years to spread the religious and social justice message of the Gospels in and around fascist Italy. But then in 1954, I love this, he felt the desert call and set out for the Sahara. Um, he found his way to the place where uh, Charles de Foucault, who's I think a saint or on his way to a saint, is a desert guy who never made a single convert, and then the people he served killed him. Um, Monastic austerity and silent adoration were to be combined with a life of humble labor, friendship, and solidarity with one's immediate neighbors. So he found his way to the place where Charles de Foucault had founded the novitiate of the Little Brothers of Jesus, and he stayed there, I think, for many years. I love this too. A decisive moment, a cut occurred when Carretto burned the address book containing the contact information for thousands of his friends back in Italy. It would be like if we just wiped out the contacts app on our phone. He stayed for 10 years as a hermit, translating the Bible into Bedouin, sitting for hours before the Blessed Sacrament in prayer. I truly love this about him, though. At last, he left the Sahara, returned to his hometown in Italy, and went to visit his beloved mother, who, for more than 30 years, had been living an active life, crowded with family, social, and parish responsibilities. Perhaps the surest sign of Carretto's sanctity is this: he recognized that for all his time in the desert, his mother was at least the contemplative that he was. So it just goes to show you don't have to, if we're called to set out for the Sahara, beautiful, but a contemplative can be formed anywhere on earth, including in the midst of a very active life. So I love that he didn't think, oh, I have found the soul way. But he has these wonderful things to say about adoration. Again, I've written on this here, there, and everywhere. He wants my favorite book of his is called Letters from the Desert. Um, in it, he describes a whole week he spent alone with the Eucharist, exposed day and night. He writes, silence in the desert, silence in the cave, silence in the Eucharist. No prayer is so difficult as the adoration of the Eucharist. One's whole natural strength rebels against it. One would prefer to carry stones in the sun. The senses, memory, imagination, all are repressed. Faith alone triumphs, and faith is hard, dark, stark. And boy, if you have a mind like mine that is constantly running and that tends to go in obsessive ruts and tends to make chess moves of how we should deal with this situation, and what about the bus from Sligo to Creeslough and on September 15th. Um, it is really, it does go against everything in us that wants to be kind of surging forward and doing. And so Carretto continues, what does Jesus do in the Eucharist? I have thought about it often. In the Eucharist, Jesus is immobilized. He is reduced to a little piece of white bread. The world needs him so much, and yet he doesn't speak. Men need him so much, and he doesn't move. The Eucharist is the silence of God, the weakness of God. And sitting before the tabernacle this week, I thought it suddenly uh, it occurred to me that it's like sitting with a friend, a beloved friend who's dying on his or her deathbed, and is also in a coma. I mean, that's how. And so you're sitting there, not. I mean, the person could conceivably come out of the coma. Christ can do anything he wants. He could conceivably come out of the tabernacle and greet us in the flesh. But you're not there based on that hope. You're just there in loving attentiveness. I often, I think, I talk all the time, think all the time, have my ideas, but let God have a chance. When you're talking to a friend and you realize, oh my gosh, I am just talking way too much. Let them talk. And it's like, let Jesus talk. Let God talk. Let me just sit here in silence and drop all the plans, all the ideas. I'm never trying to have an experience before the Eucharist. My basic stance is I can't even believe that anyone lets me into the church and lets me sit there. Thank you for counting us worthy to minister to you, as it says in the Eucharistic prayer. I'm always kind of there I'm very clear under the sort of sufferance of Christ, let the children come to me. Um, so I'm not looking for an experience, but at the same time, um, it's hard. It's also hard to just have literally zero expectations. I mean, my hope is always that I will grow in love. And I think, I mean, how can it be? There could be no surer, if we are to grow in love, to sit in silence before the Blessed Sacrament has got to be the absolute best way that we could poise ourselves to receive the grace to love as He has loved. And so that brings me um, to The God Who Comes, this other book by Carlo that I bought for $3 or something like that. And, his stuff is very simple. Um, but he talks about this very thing. The first commandment, he says, remains the first commandment. And it is the first, both under the old law and under the new, that was pronounced by Jesus. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, and then the problem. If you don't pray, if you are not searching for a personal relationship with God, if you don't stay with Him for long periods in order to know Him, study Him, understand Him, little by little, you will start forgetting Him. Your memory will weaken. You will no longer recognize Him. And I just think that is key. We have to, as in any relationship, we get to stay with Him for long periods in order to know Him. And even if we're not looking for an experience in prayer, you definitely, that sense comes, and it's not in the form for me of insight. I'm not trying to have insights, or it's just this sense that you are being moved, in a sense, to, you're being guided. um and he talks about this whole, oh, but our excuse always, we don't have the time. Have you been not praying, he asks, not seeking Him personally, because you don't love Him, or because you have no time? So he's basically saying, you say it's because you have no time, but is it not really because we don't love God? We don't love Him, because if we did, the time would find itself. Um, so he continues on, if you pray seriously, if you pray in truth, it will be God Himself who will send you out with greater strength, with greater love towards your brothers, so that you may love them more gratuitously and serve them more delicately. This is perfect for the gospel this week, that is so much about, I am the vine, you are the branches. Without me, you can do nothing. Um, it is impossible to pray to a personal God, says Carlo Carretto, that is, love a personal God and remain indifferent to your suffering brethren. It is impossible. So he too is saying, if you spend time before the Eucharist, it's literally, you can't not grow in love. I mean, it's, in a way, I think the very fact that we're there means we've already grown in love. It's that kind of instantaneous, that when we turn our will to God, it's like the answer, our prayers already answered. Like any drunk who sincerely prays to get sober, it's almost like, the fiat, like it's accomplished in a sense. If you really want to be sober, you will be, and you're willing to cooperate and do a little work. Um, the Father is a person, and He has a right to be loved, just as your brothers have a right to be loved. And persons are loved for themselves, not for other ends. love is personal and it is strong and tenacious only if it is personal, not an abstraction. Never. Um, he talks about, well, without God, do we not do so many? Have you not realized that we do so many useless things, that we give lifeless things, that we say boring things, which absolutely nobody listens to? It's kind of, you're like, oh, sorry. Um, but anyway, where can I get conviction if not in prolonged prayer? Where can I get authenticity if not in my personal experience of God? And I'll end with this. He says, saying, I've no time to pray because I've so much to do is like saying, I don't know God, but I want to speak about him. I've lost sight of him, but I want to show you where he is to be found. These things happen, but they are not logical, and they give witness to our lack of logic, but there is something greater, more abysmal than our lack of logic in dealing with God. Try to think about it. In other words, more abysmal equals not really, sort of not sincerely praying. Um, anyway, that is plenty, and God bless you all. And let's continue to take up our place before the body and blood of Christ.